The Sun and the Wayward Stars by TheBiButterfly. Chapter 1. An Affectionate Bloke. Stop scowling. Your face will stay that way, Pandora teased, poking a finger into Regulus's dimple. She tipped her head to the side and followed his gaze. What did Potter do this time? Regulus swatted her hand and grimaced. He hugged Sirius. Pandora frowned. So, he always hugs Sirius, as well as the other two. Just an affectionate bloke, I suppose. She studied Regulus's face, eyes flitting across his features with interest. This has gone on for long enough, Regulus. I'm starting to think you fancy him. Shove off. He's a blood traitor and a thief. I'm allowed to hate him. Regulus snapped, turning away from her. I suppose, but why would you want to? It's not like he's doing it to spite you. Father actually likes your brother. Why, I'll never understand, but they're best mates. Of course he hugs him, Pandora pointed out. She glanced back at the four boys, lips twitching with amusement, as she watched Remus shove James away when he leaned across the table to hug him as well. That hardly makes him a thief. Regulus snorted derisively. Sirius is a twat, but he means well. Potter is just rubbing it in my face that he's taken my place. He clenched his teeth at the name as the name rolled off his tongue, lifting his hand as he reached for his wand. Like lightning, the Ravenclaw's hand shot out and gripped his wrist. Don't even think about it. Last time you hexed him, they fluted the dodges. I thought Rosier was going to start a full bloody war over it. Evan had the right idea, Regulus grumbled, lifting his arm from her grasp. Pandora shrugged. I suppose you'd like that, wouldn't you? She sighed, resting her chin on her hand and her elbows on the table. Her gaze flicked back to the Gryffindors. I think he's rather fetching, personally. What? Regulus gasped, shriveling violently in his seat to face her. Pandora! Oh, shut it. He's gorgeous, Pandora huffed, crossing her arms over her chest. Don't pretend you haven't noticed. If he wasn't such an arrogant prick, I'd give it a go. Leaning across the table, Barty flicked Regulus's hand. Oi, don't yell at it. She has a fucking point. You two? Traitors, all of you. Regulus shot back, wrenching his arm away and rubbing his hand. Is everyone in love with him now? Barty leveled an annoyed look at him. Just because he's fit doesn't mean he's worth shagging. Don't be rude. Pandora nodded at Barty in appreciation. Exactly. The long strand of blonde hair she was twirling mindlessly fell from her fingers. I wouldn't, obviously, Regulus. I'm just appreciating. Don't, Regulus grumbled, shoving his plate away. His appetite long deserted him since spotting the deep embrace between his brother and the Potter boy. Against his will, his eyes trailed back to the pair, who were now shoving each other with grins that encompassed their faces. I'd rather have a go at you or your brother myself. I'd rather have a go at you or your brother myself, Barty taunted, leaning his arms on the table and shooting a mischievous grin at Regulus. You blacks are far too pretty. Regulus rolled his eyes. I'm not shagging you, Barty. Narrowing his gaze, Barty licked his lips. Last QVC. Okay, I can pronounce that. And smirked. Never say never, Black. Snorting a laugh, Pandora nudged Regulus's shoulders. Might do you some good. You're so tense lately. The offer stands, Barty insisted, eyebrows wiggling suggestively. Evan plopped down in his seat next to Barty and then froze, eyes flitting between the three of them. What did I miss? This looks disturbing. Barty propositioned Regulus again, Pandora supplied She waved a hand dismissively at Evan's horrified expression. He said no, of course, because Regulus can allow himself to have a bit of fun. Loosen up, Black, Barty insisted, reaching across the table to prod his shoulder. Regulus huffed, leaning away from his touch. Piss off. Pandora frowned, slipping her hand into his and squeezing. We're just worried about you, Regulus. You're wound so tight. I'm afraid you'll burst at the seams. His shoulders slumped and his eyes fluttered closed. I know. It's just infuriating. You could talk to Sirius, Pandora suggested, tightening her grip on his hand when he flinched. Come on, Regulus. He's tried to reach out. You're the one who pushes him away. Releasing an exasperated breath, Regulus covered his face with his free hand. He knew she was right, but it wasn't going to help either of them. Sirius had tried, several times, as a matter of fact. If he had half the courage his brother did, he'd have met with him too. The ringing shrieks of his mother still bandied about his head, however. She'd warned him away from Sirius, and, Potter, her threats were never uttered lightly, and she meant every word. Regulus, you all right? Evan asked, eyebrows drawn together in concern. An exasperated huff sounded on Regulus's left. What have you lot done now? Evan shrugged. I didn't do anything. He looked up at Pandora pleadingly. Right? He's jealous of Potter. Again. Pandora replied plainly, smiling softly at Dorcas as she patted Regulus's shoulder. Bloody hell, why? Dorcas groaned, rolling her eyes. If you don't pull your head out of your ass this minute, Regulus Black, I swear. Regulus scoffed. I am not jealous, especially of that prat. He pulled away from Pandora and stood up, straightening his robes. I'm done. Just going to find a place to read. Pandora jumped to her feet. I'll come with you. No. Regulus refuted, holding out his hand to block her. I need to be alone. Dramatic much, Barty teased, arching an eyebrow skeptically. The fearless Regulus Black running off to hide again can't cope with a bit of ribbing. Inhaling deeply, Regulus glared at him. Leave it or I'll hex your eyebrows off again. All right, Barty acquiesced, shrugging his shoulder. Go on then, we'll find you later. Regulus nodded in acknowledgement and turned swiftly away from the table. He kept his chin held high as he snapped his spine perfectly straight. Old habits he was in no hurry to forget. While his parents may not expect great things from him like they did from Sirius, he still had a reputation to maintain. He would never admit it to anyone else, but Regulus felt wholly unprepared for the title of heir. If he was honest with himself, unworthy as well. When his mother announced he was no longer welcome home for breaks when he refused to be hand-fasted to a girl over the summer, he was somewhat relieved. Not that the discussion was over, but he was given temporarily reprieve. With the winter halls fast approaching, he faced 2 lonely weeks in the castle, however. All of his friends were leaving. Heading up the vast maze of staircases, Regulus allowed his mind to wander. At the beginning of his 6th year, he'd felt fairly confident that this was his year to prove himself. He'd spent his 17th birthday with his friends and ignored the letter from his parents reminding him of his family duty as heir. While his celebration was a bit luxury without Sirius's usual chaos added, he was pleased to be an adult nonetheless. Reggie, stop! A voice called out behind him. Regulus rolled his eyes, annoyed that his brother chose now to accost him. He sped up, moving as fast as the impediment of his robes allowed. Pounding footsteps followed him up the staircase. Despite Regulus's attempt to escape, just as he jumped off the edge of one onto another, Sirius leapt right behind him. his brother reaching out and grabbed his arm as they landed, swinging him around. "Oi, why are you running?" "To get away from you," Regulus retorted, spinning away and charging up the stairs ahead of him. Sirius caught him immediately, matching his pace. "I heard about the Parkinson girl." Scoffing, Regulus ignored him, making a sharp turn at the top of the stairs. Sirius maintained his speed, ruffling a hand through his hair in frustration. They turned at the bend in the corridor simultaneously, but Sirius gripped his shoulder and shoved him into an alcove. He propped his fist on his hips and glared, jaw tense as he surveyed Regulus critically. "Why'd you refuse?" Sirius asked pointedly, staring him down. "I don't want to marry her," Regulus snapped, crossing his arms over his chest. "That's reason enough." A deep frown marred Sirius's face. "You never refused before. Why now?" Regulus pressed his lips together, revolting against the idea of sharing such a deep secret with anyone, let alone his brother. He could hardly admit the mere thought of marrying and presumably betting a girl made him queasy. In theory, and downright ill in consideration. He was queer, in pure blood society that was worse than an unforgivable curse. Even though Sirius turned his back on his role as heir, didn't mean he'd completely rejected pureblood ideology. He'd run to yet another pureblood family, after all. While the Potters were considered blood traitors for consorting with Muggles, their lineage still remained intact. It was logical to assume they held similar ideals nonetheless. "Reggie?" Sirius said, narrowing his gaze. "What's going on?" The longer they stood like this, the harder it would be to keep his snarky facade in place. His brother was one of the few that could see through him with relative ease. Sirius's expression softened unexpectedly as he reached out to grip Regulus's shoulder. The urge to spill every bloody detail burned the back of his throat. "Please, tell me, are you all right?" Sirius pleaded, his hands lifting to brush Regulus's chin-length hair back from his face. Huffing in resignation, Regulus nodded. "I'm fine, Sirius." His brother inhaled deeply, eyes fluttering closed as he leaned forward to rest his forehead against Regulus, like they used to do ages ago. His hands lifted to cup Regulus's jaw firmly. The relief radiating off Sirius was equal parts infuriating and welcome. Regulus never could keep up with his emotions at bay. With Sirius. He knew too well what buttons to push to rile him up or to calm him down. It horrified him that even now his brother's simple gesture could release every bit of anger he'd been clutching onto. Sirius opened his eyes slowly, ocean blue meeting steely gray with intensity. He studied Regulus for a long moment. Silent moment before lifting his head, but his brother's hands still held the size of his face. "I need to know you're okay, Reg. If I can do anything, I want you to come to me. Understand?" Sirius spoke quietly, but his fingers tensed again against Regulus's jaw. "Oh, now you care about me," Regulus snarked, pushing him away. "Where was all this concern last year when you abandoned me in that awful place to run off with Potter? Has the guilt finally caught up with you?" "I couldn't do anything for you then," Sirius defended, a deep sadness washing over his face. "I had to get out of there before it killed me." Regulus's jaw worked stiffly. "And fuck off with everyone else, right? No thought to what would happen when you ran off. Who would suffer the brunt of their anger because of it?" He shook his head and huffed. Sirius inhaled sharply. It was self-preservation. "I admit that readily. I never thought they'd come after you. You were always their favorite, the perfect example of everything I did wrong. He turned it to the side and leaned against the wall of the alcove, tugging his wand from his pocket and twirling it idly over his fingers. I wanted to take you with me, but I didn't think you'd have come. I would have, Regulus insisted, fisting his hand at his sides. You never offered. You just left me there to rot. Reggie, don't, Regulus snapped, wrenching his hand out from his sleeve. He pointed it at Sirius and glared. Don't you dare pretend you thought about me. Not even for a moment. With Regulus's wand tip pressed to his throat, Sirius's face fell. He gave Regulus a long, pained look before stepping back into the corridor. Sirius blinked rapidly, chewing the insides of his cheek. Nodding slowly, he sighed. You're right. I didn't think about you. I just wanted to escape. Startled by the admission, Regulus lowered his wand at his side and stared. He hadn't expected such blatant honesty and didn't have a comeback handy to defend himself against it. His throat closed as he took in the defeated grimace on Sirius's face. The truth hung in the air between them, his indignation feigning over an all too familiar sharp pang of rejection. His brother never even considered Regulus in his plan. Not even a passing thought. I'm truly sorry, Reggie, Sirius said solemnly, pocketing his wand. If you want to hex me, do it. I won't find you. I deserve it. Shaking his head sadly, Regulus's shoulders slumped. Tell me the truth, Sirius. Why didn't you take me with you? Sirius dropped his gaze to the ground. I was afraid they'd come after me if I did. They'd already disowned me, but you, to them, you were worth pursuing. You left me, Regulus whispered, brows furrowing. It's not too late, Reggie. You can leave too, Sirius blathered, reaching out for him. He buried his hand in Regulus's hair, grabbing the back of his head. Don't go back. Come with me. Regulus closed his eyes, lifting a hand to clutch his brother's forearm. Where would we go? Well, the Potter said absolutely not. Regulus refused, eyes flashing open as his nails embedded into Sirius's skin. That's the first place they'd look. Sirius shook his head. You're an adult now. They can't force you to go back. His fingers curled tighter into Regulus's dark waves. They can stop you from leaving now. Please, Reggie, come with me. I'm not allowed home for breaks. Regulus admitted, relaxing his hold on Sirius's arm marginally, but desperately leaning into his hands. I don't want to stay at the Potters. Come stay for winter halls. You don't have to decide anything right away. They are good people, and our parents will never know, Sirius insisted, ducking his head slightly to catch Regulus's eyes. At the end of term, I'll get a place for us. Let me try to make it right, Reggie, please. Sucking in a tuttered breath, Regulus nodded. All right, fine. But I still don't like him, and I never will. Snorting a startled laugh, Sirius grinned. James is an acquired taste, I'll give you that. He grows on you, though, if you let him. I won't, Regulus grumbled. Sirius pulled Regulus into his arms and squeezed him tight. That's all right. You don't have to. Relieved, Regulus sank into his embrace and pressed his face into Sirius's shoulders. It was a dangerous proposition. If it got back to his parents, they would be furious and punish him violently. Regulus pushed the rush of fear from his mind the moment he heard Potter's voice echoing down the corridor. This break was his chance to banish that brother imposter back into his place as a mere friend. Oi, Sirius, why did you run off? Potter called, running down the corridor. Sirius stepped back from Regulus, but kept hold of his shoulder, pulling him out of the alcove and into the light. Flashing a triumphant grin at Potter, Sirius clutched the side of Regulus's neck fondly. Guess who's joining us for holes? Really? That's brilliant, Potter enthused, bounding down the hallway towards them. Mom will be so surprised. Regulus was startled by his eager response. Potter was clearly dense if he didn't realize the two of them were adversaries. Sirius must have mentioned how close they used to be. He was determined to get that closeness back, Potter or no Potter. When he reached the two of them, Potter came to an abrupt stop and rocked on the balls of his feet. A brilliant smile spread across his lips as he met Regulus's scrutinizing gaze. The bloke's hazel eyes sparkled with delight as he ruffled his curls carelessly. "Hello, Regulus," Potter said, holding out his hand. "Potter," Regulus replied, nodding curtly and ignoring his hand. Sirius rolled his eyes. "Don't be rude, Reggie. He's not that bad." Potter smirked, dropping his hand to the side with a shrug. "Can't blame him for being intimidated, Sirius. I am something of a legend around here. Master prankster, head boy, and star chaser, after all." "Oh, do you play Quidditch?" Regulus asked, blinking slowly. He did his best to project an innocent confusion, enjoying the disbelief flitting across Potter's face. "I'm Gryffindor's captain," Potter huffed, staring at him incredulously. Shaking with silent laughter, Sirius leaned into Regulus. "He's taking the piss, mate. Reggie is Slytherin's seeker." "I knew that," Potter replied defensively, leaning down to meet Regulus at his level, eyes narrowing behind his glasses. "You're pretty good, too." I know," Regulus hummed, nonplussed by Potter's chuckle in response. Sirius let out a bark of laughter and leaned back against the stone wall. "Don't let his innocent acts fool you, James. He bites." Eyebrows soaring up his forehead, Potter eyed Regulus with renewed interest. "Oh?" Ignoring the jibe, Regulus focused his gaze past Potter with a bored expression on his face. A coy smile slid across his lips as the tall, lanky distraction passed on the stairs. "Is that Lupin I see? Clever bloke, that one. Will he be over for holes too?" Perking up, Sirius leaned forward and waved at Lupin. "Remus, over here!" Regulus was well aware of Sirius' eager attempts to impress the tall Blake, and used it to his advantage. As Lupin looped down the corridor, hands raised in greeting, Regulus noted disappointment flashed across Potter's face. His expression quickly changed to a ready grin as he spun around to greet Lupin. Regulus was amused by how easily it was to deflate Potter's confidence. He hadn't even tried to be mean, he just feigned disinterest. This was going to be laughably easy. "Hello, and this is the first chapter, and this is also my first time I'm going to read a fic that is more than a one-shot, and this is quite a long one. It's been requested to read it, and I've already read it myself and a lot of this fanfic author, so I was happy to oblige. I really like this fic. There are some explicit parts in this fanfic, and I'm not sure yet if I'm going to be reading them out loud, because I may just be uncomfortable doing that. If I skip these parts, I will explain that in the end. And if you want to read ahead, you can do so by clicking the link in my description. And also to give kudos or leave a comment to this amazing author, because they have read a lot of great things, a great fics. So definitely check out more of their fics. And I also do not know how consistent I will be in posting them, because I am purely motivation driven, and I'm very sorry for that, but it's just a fact. so I'm not sure about that yet. But we'll wait and see how that goes. Have a very nice day. And well, bye.